All right, I'm so excited to welcome Erik Huberman to Entrepreneur School. Thanks for joining me, Erik. How are
Yeah,
you?
thank you for having me.
Yeah. Okay, so I want to just like hit this right off the bat with you've built a really successful business valued at over $150 million in under 10 years, which is probably not even like on the radar for so many people who are listening to this show. But I love to like unpack that journey a little bit. And if maybe we could like reverse engineer it in terms of anything that you did on this road that you wish you didn't do or you would do differently if you were giving advice to somebody who is, more at the beginning of their journey?
Yeah, I'm trying to think what it like because later on, yes, but early on it actually went pretty well. We made like the mistakes got bigger as the company got bigger. So like the mistakes that stand out to me are more recent ones than they are early days. I'm trying to think of like the early days. Yeah, I'd say the first thing that I did that wasn't the right move was my original team was all arm's reach, like people I knew that was just like, hey, come help me with this, come work with me. And the problem is like when they're either friends or they come in that kind of a tone and it's not like a professional like interview, let me figure out if we're going to work together and you take it. It was just like, I need people, come on in. Their sort of attitude towards the company was similar, where it was kind of lackadaisical. And so none of those people lasted. Actually, only one, and he became my business partner. But the rest of them, like we lasted less than 6 months because they were not signing up to come work for a company that they had like gone through the process and felt lucky to be at. They're just like, oh yeah, Erik, like I'll come work with you, whatever. Like it was again very passive in that sense. And so, making the onboarding professional, even like I'm not saying don't hire people, like you can do that, but you need to do it in a way that makes them feel like they earned it, not that they just got it handed to them. That I think that's important.
Yeah, that's really interesting, actually. I find a lot of the times entrepreneurs that this is how I feel, and I've hired and then like scaled back to being a solopreneur again at this point. It's like, how do you actually translate that desire and the passion that you have for wanting to make your business your vision? Like, how do you actually, find people who want to do that?
Well, if you think about like when someone takes a job, generally they've gone through an interview process and like it feels like a win, like I got the job. But when you just call up a person you already know or a friend and say, "Hey, can you come work with me?" It's like there was none of that like excitement. You kind of take that away. And so I think but I think that's an important part of like stepping into something is like actually feeling like you want a process versus like yeah, there's no emotion then tied to it. It's just like, yeah, okay, sounds good. Like this could be cool, but it's just different. And I noticed the actions were very different. The way they came to work was very different.
So do you find that you have people now who you really think are like, involved in the like on board with your vision and really like an
Oh yeah,
extension
yeah.
of you in that way?
I mean, we would have never built what we did without that. That's an important part. And it wasn't necessarily that those people lacked the same vision. They were just, again, it wasn't like they didn't feel the win on the coming in. And so it was just like they weren't, I was lucky to have them. They weren't lucky to have the job. And that's probably a big part of it.
Hmm. Okay, so what does business look like for you today? Like what's the day to day and what's going on at Hawke Media?
Yeah, I mean, we're talks about 250 people. We also have our venture funds, and we just closed our second fund, which is a $20 million fund. We have our software business that's up and running, got a CEO on that. So these days, it's a lot. I mean, I've always been the guy that's waving the flag, beating the drum in promotionals. Like I just spent the past 4 days at a venture capital conference in Napa, hosted by the guys from the All In podcast. So like Jason Calcanis and Chamath and David Sachs and all these people. And so I've just been able to get into rooms and kind of build the network and brand of Hawke that I do a lot of that. That's probably a third of my time. Another third is just focusing on growth, working with our sales team, our marketing team, our partnerships team, our M&A team. We're acquiring a lot of companies right now and like really building that way. So spending a lot of time on that. And then another third of my time spent on all the other stuff, working with my partner, our head of services, and really helping with strategy on the overall business and how we grow this thing. And so, probably the best use of my time, but I spend a lot of time too, like just talking to people, partners, clients, prospects, employees, executives, etc. And I would joke all the time that I'm a traffic coordinator because I'm like, I'll be the first point of contact and I'll be like, okay, you talk to this, you do this, you go like just directing everything the right way.
Yeah, and we talk a lot about visibility on the show and promoting yourself, and that's one of the things that a lot of business owners struggle with because we don't like to, brag or talk about ourselves or ask for money or any of this stuff. Like,
Yeah, I think that might be, and not just because I spent a lot of time there. I think it's more of a Canadian thing than an American thing.
yeah, that's true.
I know that we bought it, we acquired a couple Canadian companies, and the self-promotion doesn't seem to be an issue for most Americans.
Okay, so step one, be more like the Americans.
Yeah.
It's fine. You can be brat, like
Well,
you
and
can
again,
British.
I look at it this way because I've talked to people that do feel shy about it, and I'm like, okay, so my view of it, I don't do the promotional stuff because of an ego thing at all. Like I would be the most silent person in the world if I didn't think it drove business. But being top of mind is really important, and nobody's gonna promote yourself more than yourself. Like it's just not gonna happen. And so I do believe in self-promotion for the sake of driving your business. And there's a couple things that I think are important. Number one, if you think you're providing value to the world, then it shouldn't be an issue because you're just letting people know the value you provide. Like if you're not, then yeah, don't promote yourself and maybe find another vocation. Like this is not what you should probably not be taking advantage of people. So if you feel good about the value you're providing to people, then promoting it shouldn't be an issue. And number two, if you're worried about turning people off, can almost guarantee the people that will be turned off by you promoting yourself, we're never going to work with you either way.
Mm-hmm.
Because the people that watch the promotion, again, if it's quality and authentic and they're like, oh, you're actually doing good things and your product or service is doing good things for people, they'll be interested. If they're put off by it, they were never a potential customer anyways. And in that case, who cares? So
Totally.
I think that's super important, that stuff.
Yeah, so good. So are any particular like scrappy, like really, effective ways that you've promoted yourselves that maybe are less
It's actually, and it's funny,
trendy?
like secret sauce isn't necessarily in the promotion. The promotion's nice because like, I've got a bunch of social media followers and I continue to gain them. And a lot of times it's keeping me top of mind with a bunch of people I've already connected with. But the biggest thing is actually just staying in touch with your contacts. Like, if you're, depending on what the person's doing for business, but if you're B2B, like the simple act of just checking in on someone every quarter or depending on your business, however often you should, to the follow-up, the staying on top of that sort of pipeline will completely transform a business. And I watch like 95% of people don't do any of it. And they shrug it off like, oh yeah, I got to get to that. And it's like, that's literally the most important part of your business. The nurturing of your leads is like, that is it. And people go, well, no, I need to go focus on posting, Instagram reels. It's like your Instagram reels aren't doing anything for you. Stop it. Go, you've got this base, go talk to them and fill the base. Like that's the simplest part of that, like early entrepreneurs, individual entrepreneur kind of side is like, you should be building your contact list and staying in touch with them. Start there. It's that simple. And most don't do that. So that's why I can confidently say like, start there. And then once you've got that system in place, then other things become worth it. Because if I get, a couple more contacts through doing a good social post, literally just one or two, but I put them into a system of follow-up and staying in touch that's going to make sure they don't fall through the cracks. Now all that other stuff is worth it. But if I don't have that net built that I'm actually going to utilize that awareness, then it's vanity metrics. Oh, good, I know so many people with millions of followers on social media that make no money. And it's like, that's like, don't focus on those metrics. Focus on actually, how do I build a business?
Thank you. I'm like, I love how, that's very validating. I preach that exact same thing. But just to show like that, the results and the outcome that you've been able to have by focusing on that, because it's truly like business and life and everything. It's all about relationships, right?
Yeah. I mean, I spend a lot of my time going to events. I meet people. And then, like I just mentioned, I went to this event the past 4 days. I probably came back with, 20, 30 new contacts that are mostly have all heard from me already and staying in touch. And who knows what business comes out of that. But, 30 very solid venture capital funds that I now am talking to, probably going to be able to turn into something.
Yeah, exactly. And so I think what I'm hearing you also saying, just to like point it out directly, is don't let those business cards collect dust on your desk when you get home from
Yeah.
an event.
Never. Yeah, that's a great. Actually, I don't even do that. So there's an app. This is a little side note because hopefully by the time this airs, it might be up. But there's an app called Captio. It's this, and it's literally just a notepad that I type in whatever and hit send, and it goes to my email box. So my way of doing it is I literally hand them my phone and go, "Hey, give me your email, and then let's follow up after this." And then when I sit down in my email box, their email address is sitting in front of me, and I send them an email right there. So there's no like second step of like, and literally if someone hands me a business card, I do it myself. I type their email into this and just have it in my inbox and then throw out the business card. And I don't have business cards because the other piece of this is I'm not hoping that they respond or follow up because most people don't. So I'm going to get your contact. And again, even someone that's trying to get a hold of me, like I'm good about it. So like if someone's like, I want to show you my software, like we have our venture fund, I want you to invest in my company. I'm like, yeah, give me your email, I'll shoot you an email. And if they're like really easy about it and don't get my contact, I'm like, probably not a good investment. You're not going to chase people down. You're not a good salesperson. I'm out. But a lot of times they will rightfully be like, well, no, let me get yours too. I'm like, no, that's, yeah, sure. Here, it's just, my email's easy. It's e@hawkemedia.com. And so it's like anyone can get a hold of me on purpose. But I'm like, also, I will follow up. I'm disciplined about this. This is, you will hear from me. And so what I was going to say is that app was taken off the App Store. So I went to my tech team and asked them, could you replicate this? And in 2 hours, they built this. So we have HawkePad now, which we're now waiting on iOS approval to have it on the App Store.
Oh, cool. I love that because it is actually a really clunky, but something that's so important. And like I go to events regularly as well. And I try and do different things. Like I have a QR code that takes them to all my things and
Right.
whatever. And
But that forces
how do you
them, like if you're
actually
giving them
remember
your
my email?
info, then they have the control. And I'm always like, no, I'm going to control this process because I know I'm disciplined about it. And, it's really, especially for like younger salespeople or new entrepreneurs, it's really easy for people to be like, oh yeah, here, I'll give you my contact. And then in their head, they're like, well, I did my job. If they reach out, great. And it's like, no, 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 no. You want to control your destiny in every way that you can. And so that made it really easy because again, even the new bumps back on iPhones or whatever, you get the person's contact, but where's the reminder to actually follow up? Like that, I'm like, people do that. I'm like, great. But what I end up doing is I do the bump, I give them my contact, I get theirs, then I copy their email address and put it in that. So I remember I still need to follow up. I have their contact, great. I still need to follow up with them and remember to do that. So that app becomes my to-do list too, because then my email box is my to-do list. So keeps everything in one place for me too.
I'm like, I don't know why we're having a mind-blowing moment about remembering to email people when they give you
Yeah,
their
and
email address.
it is, I mean, again, I have 250 people on my team, and even my own team that has watched me do this, I have to remind and get disciplined back on it. It's like, it's just, for some reason, I am disciplined about it, and I'm not disciplined about a lot of other things. But so many people don't prioritize this, and it is that simple. The secret sauce is usually something simple. It's not some groundbreaking technology. AI is not running my world. We do have an AI tool. It's going great, but like it's actually the basics that really help you win.
That's such a good reminder because it's so achievable. Yeah.
Yep. And the hard part is you just got to be out there too. Like you have to get those contacts to email them. So like that part's important too. But I usually see people struggle on the follow up more than they struggle on the opening the door.
Totally. Yeah. So where does all of this come from? Like when go back to the beginning and like talk about a little bit about how you got started in business and what some of the initial practices were that you think helped you build.
Yeah, I mean, so Hawke is my fifth company. Started it when I was 20, just turned 27, and started working on it at 26. So I was early entrepreneur. I mean, even as a kid, my grandfather and father were both entrepreneurs, so I came from that. So like I took it for granted in the literal sense of the term, where it's like I just thought that's what you did. You might get a job to learn, but you build your own business because that's what I saw. And so I decided, my dad got me, he used to do, why did I can't remember why exactly. Oh yeah, he got me excited about the idea of like saving money for the sake of saving money. Like I got to save enough to have $1 bill, then a $5 bill, then a $10 bill. Like he got me excited about like leveling up in dollar bills when I was like 4, 5, 6 years old. And so at 6, I wanted to figure out how to get to that higher dollar bill. So I went around my house and grabbed a bunch of my parents' things I decided they didn't need anymore and went door to door with a trash bag selling my parents' stuff. In a small town where it was safe. It was really funny. And did it with a friend and ended up splitting the money with him, but feeling that was so unfair because it was my parents' stuff. Why did he get to split the money with me? But I think we made $135 that day. And so anyways, then at 8 years old, I wanted to be a rock star. I needed an electric guitar to do so, and told my dad, and my dad's response to me verbatim was, good, get a fucking job. I'm like, okay. At that age, it's not like you don't look at your dad and go, are you crazy? You're telling an 8-year-old to get a job? Like I was just like, okay, that's what I'm supposed to do. I'll go get a job. Started with selling lemonade and I did not make enough money. I was like making, I think it was like, I made $14 the first day. And I'm like, this is going to take me like weeks. Like this won't do. I don't have weeks. You know, as a kid, that's way too long. So then I actually went to start buying and selling Beanie Babies. And then that got really fun for me. And I ended up making a few $1,000s as an 8-year-old buying and selling Beanie Babies.
What?
And that was a good time. So then put some money away. I bought the guitar. I bought a BMX and then saved money for a car actually. And so always like business, but again, I wanted to be a musician. Realized about 12 years old, I wasn't that good. All my friends started playing and were immediately better than me. And so I was like, okay, maybe I should just make this a hobby and do business. And I thought I'd be a music manager until I was like 16, 17. And then I was like, I don't need to make music my career. I can have a hobby and go do something else. And out of college, went into real estate. My dad was in the waste and real estate business, like the trash business and real estate business. And I had learned about it just watching him, but I went off on my own. But I started 1 week before the entire banking industry collapsed in the US. So September of 2008.
Okay.
So yeah, great timing. Made $350 that year and realized it was like 6 months in. I was like, this isn't going to do. And I started working on a side project that turned into one-on-one business coaching online for musicians, independent artists. Raised $1 million for that company. Brought in a bunch of great executives. Deepak Chopra was an advisor. Tom Silverman from Tommy Boy Records. Like it was the drummer in my band through middle school and high school. His dad, I didn't know, but reached out wanting to partner with me on this. He was one of the founders of Pay-Per-View on the board of Men's Warehouse, like had a nonprofit with Deepak Chopra. So like just keeping in touch with a childhood friend and helping him out when I went to business school or undergrad and was kind of helping guide him, and his dad appreciated what I was doing for his son and just said, hey, we should do something together. And that I had no idea who his dad was. It was like, as kids, you don't care what your friends' parents do. You like doing your thing. And so, yeah, that was super helpful. Launched that, built it for 2 years, hired a CEO to take it over because I realized it was never going to be that big, and learned the problem of having a business with when like each business I've had, I've learned like a key problem. That one was having a customer that doesn't have a lot of money is really tough, and independent artists don't. So it was just a hard business. Then built a t-shirt subscription company, I bootstrapped it, and ended up selling it after a year and a half. But we really got to a point where we realized why companies raise money, because we were grinding. It had grown fast, but we had great unit economics, meaning the individual sale, we were making great margin, but we hadn't hit a scale where we could really scale up and hire the people we needed to. So I was working 18, 20-hour days, 7 days a week, and we couldn't afford to like replace ourselves yet. And I just got to the point after a year and a half where I was like, this isn't sustainable. It's not growing fast enough. We can't find the bandwidth to do everything we need to do. So we have to raise money or shut it down or sell it. And we ended up getting the opportunity to sell it. And one little side note there weren't as many podcasts at the time. So I didn't know that you were supposed to pitch hundreds of VCs and hear tons of no's before you got a yes. So I met one VC, a guy named Howard Morgan, who is a legend in the VC world. He had started a fund called First Round Capital. And I met with him. He loved the idea, but had just invested in a company called Fab.com. And so it was potentially competitive. And so he's like, I can't, sorry, like this is awesome, but I can't do it. And to me, it was like, well, the VC said no, so I'm out. No more raising money. And so we ended up luckily meeting someone that wanted to buy it. We sold it for enough to pay off the debt of being in the financial crisis and 2 startups that I was in. And so got to, reset at zero, and then got recruited by an incubator called Science that had just launched a company called Dollar Shave Club, advised for that company along with their other portfolio companies, helped them build an active wear brand that we sold a year later. And the issue I saw there was they decided to vertically integrate the entire business because they thought the valuation would be higher, meaning we opened our own factories to manufacture activewear versus using other factories. The cost almost took us out of business. And it was just like to run a business for the sake of the exit versus the sake of a good business, like just run your business as if you're going to hold it forever. And that was the lesson there. We ended up selling it. And then that's when I started advising consulting and then built out Hawke Media.
Did you always think that you were going to build businesses and sell them?
And I've been at Hawke, I've had for over 10 years now. So no, it's, I think I actually, and this has been something that is counter to a lot of what people's advice is. I like being more reactive than proactive. Now, proactivity is great, like, but quote, like building a company to sell. there are definitely reasons to look at why companies get valued more and why they become sellable, because a lot of the reasons they are good business practices. Having more stable revenue and more predictable revenue, having making sure that you're not a key man risk, meaning like if I get sick or something, the company doesn't fall apart. Like those are good business practices. But actually planning on a sale and going like, we're going to sell in 2 years, or go big or go home, I think that's ridiculous. Like I looked at, again, I worked with Dollar Shave Club and I watched that path, and they were gonna, like, if they didn't get the sale to Unilever, that company was pretty much out of business. They were in big trouble. And so there was a binary outcome that ended up working in their favor. But it was like the gamble, like there's so many other companies that play that game and then end up not getting it and they're gone. And so for me, I was always like, well, why would I play that versus like, why not just like a level of success can ebb and flow, but it won't be zero, because companies fail for two reasons. Really simple. Number one, they get underwater on capital. So you take on debt or you take on investors and you can't get above that line anymore. And you either can't pay back the debt, or you can't get to a point where the investors make money and you end up losing your company. That's number one, why companies fail. Number two, super simple, the leadership team gives up. That's it. Because if you don't have a debt hurdle or a finance hurdle to get over, your company can shrink and grow and whatever. Like it doesn't matter how big or small. You might make a little less money, you might make a little more money, but as long as you don't give up, that company can sustain. And so what that means to me is there's two things: don't get underwater on financing, and find ways that you can do this forever. And and we realized that early in the business, and so we just focused on that. Like, how can I make sure that this is sustainable for me, that I'm not going to emotionally just go out the window or physically cannot work anymore, kind of thing. And so building a model around that, building a business around that, super important.
Yeah, I've heard lots of that. The struggle of entrepreneurship is real. And the daily like need to get up and feel like, okay, I'm working towards something important. This matters to me. It matters to who it serves and the impact that it has. And the only way to fail is to quit.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah, it's true. And it's like, there's that great Chinese proverb about like, we'll see, where it's like, basically like every step that feels like a failure, well, let's see, like it could be the best thing for me. I'd be a real estate agent right now if it wasn't for the financial crisis. At the time, it felt like a failure and a disaster, but I am so glad that happened. So like the idea of like, when you're in the middle of it and it feels like you're failing, well, it's only if the story ends there. And so it's about just playing it out, and honestly, like everything you can do to train yourself to not be emotional, because running a business is hard. Like all the metaphors I've heard, but one of my favorites was like Gary Vaynerchuk at a conference. He said like entrepreneurship is eating shit, and your ability to swallow will measure how successful you are. Like really vivid way of putting it that is too true, because it is like you're dealing with stuff, and it's the world's smallest violin too. And like one of the again, knowing your audience is a lot of entrepreneurs, that my sort of mantra that I don't remember where I heard it at first, but it is something that I repeat to myself every time I'm pissed off about something, is work like most won't so you can live like most can. And by the way, if you're working like most won't and you're not living like most can, then don't do that. Like then it's not worth it. So like your lifestyle, your ability to live really well needs to match the amount of work you're putting in. Because I have heard the other advice, which I think is totally valid. There's the past decade, a little more than a decade, it's become sexy to be an entrepreneur. Like entrepreneurs have become celebrities and all this stuff. And like, I think that with that comes the problem that comes from that is so many people do it for the hype of it, that you realize you're working 3 times as hard as you would in a job to make half the money. And unless you are actually fulfilled by it, which a lot of people aren't, don't. Because like, if you're doing it because of the ego and because like you want to be able to tell people you're an entrepreneur, but you're actually miserable, my stepdad used to say it to me, was a pretty successful guy, that he's like, there's no harm in being able to go home at night. Like, and so if you're not like, but like for me, it's worked out that I work like most won't and I live like most can't. So I enjoy doing it. I remind myself when things are hard, like, yeah, but it's worth it. And if it's not worth it, that's an important part too, that I have run into a lot of entrepreneurs and I'm like, again, they're making less than I would hire them for. Get a job. Like, it's okay. Like, you're going to make more money. You're going to be happier. You're going to be more stable. And you're going to realize like that is why 99% of people aren't entrepreneurs. And the likelihood of success isn't that high. But if you can do it, you can put in the work, and you can, we also say on the venture side, like you always talk about betting on the jockey investment, where you want to bet on the person running the company because they're going to pivot, they're going to change. but you want to bet on a jockey riding a horse, not a donkey. And so is what we always talk about. So like if you're working really hard on a business, it's just not a good business. It's okay to walk away from it too.
Okay, so there's like a lot to unpack there.
Yeah.
I think I just want to ask you, like, what is your definition of success, and how's that maybe evolved as you've changed and your life has changed and you've got a family now and all of that?
Yeah, it's always been the same things for me because like I think success is individualized. Everybody, like one of my closest friends since first grade, now runs a bed and breakfast on the beach in Thailand that it's $5 a day to stay at, and she lives on the beach, has two half Thai kids, and like is loving life and lives that lifestyle, and that's success to me. She's not left wanting anything. Like the pursuit of happiness is really what I think it's about. For me, what drives me is the idea of experiencing everything life has to offer, both personally and professionally. We talked before getting recording, like just had a, or not just now, she's almost 2, but I have a daughter now, building a family. All these things are really important to me. And so, but I have friends that go, how's having kids? I'm like, it's great if you want them. Like, I have friends,
Yeah.
I know people that have like just fallen into it, like they thought they were supposed to, and they hate being parents. And I'm like, well, that sucks for all of you. Like, you brought kids in the world and didn't know what you're getting into. Like, and by the way, it's not that hard to find out what it's like to have kids. Like, there's many movies, many blogs, many things. Like, thankfully, you watch a few movies, you kind of get the picture. Like, it's on the pragmatic side. The emotional side's different, but I've been driven by that. So the business side for success for me is all constant growth, constant learning, constant new things. And so I get really stressed, anxious, et cetera, when I feel like we're not making progress. But if I feel like we're making progress, I'm having a blast. And that can be all sorts of different scoreboards. It could be top line revenue growth. It could be profit growth. It could be expansion into new territories. It could be new business lines, getting into software, getting into investments, all these different things. That is what drives that, is because that's where I get excited, is what's the next, rock we can turn over and see what we can, create out of it. And what's the next innovation of our business. That's where I have fun. And again, different people are different. Some people it's a dollar number. Some people it's, all it's accolades. It just depends on what drives you. But I think figuring that out is super important because then you can build something around it.
Yeah, that's such a good point. And we're constantly shown all of these, and we listen to podcasts and we hear all these stories about people and their journeys. And then we start like believing that we're supposed to follow a certain path or have certain goals or achieve certain things. And we lose track of what matters to us individually.
And so I have a podcast, Hawke Talk, and I've interviewed, I think we're at like 140 like highly successful people in every type of vocation, like Olympians, Nobel Prize laureates, entrepreneurs, musicians, top athletes, everything. And it's all origin stories. So like, how did you get to where you are? And I was hoping that there would be like, I would figure out over the course of 50 of these or 100 of these, like some common thread that drives people to success. And I realized the exact opposite, that there is no common thread, that everybody's path is different. And so replicating paths, it's kind of like when I see these people that post like, I get up at 4 a.m. and meditate for half an hour and then do yoga for half an hour and then eat my breakfast and then, a sauna and then cold plunge and blah, 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 blah. Like, that's cool that that works for them. I also know many billionaires that wake up at 10 a.m. So it's like, it's all individualized. It's what works for you, and being self-aware enough to know I am doing myself a disservice by this or I'm not. Like for me, I start my day around 7, but I don't have a standard morning routine. Maybe it would help me. I don't really think it would. I'm not that much of a morning person, but once a week I sleep in. My wife and I trade off on weekends, and one morning each weekend I wake up with our daughter, she does. And like, I need my sleep. And I have days where I wake up and go, I am exhausted. And I have called in sick just because I'm like, I know I'm better when I'm fully energized. Like my energy is really important for the way I work. And so if I'm working myself to the core, taking a day off is not hard for me because I work 7 days a week anyway. So like, God forbid I take a day off. Like, it's like, but giving yourself that permission, if that's what you need. And like, it's just, everybody has to be self-aware enough to know like, either that'll be it, or it is the person that needs to wake up and meditate and do yoga and do all that stuff. And if that's you, great. I work out 5-6 days a week, but 3 days a week, I work out with a trainer in the middle of the day, because I found that the break because I'm like, it's 10 a.m. on Mondays and then 2 p.m. Tuesday, Thursday. That break allows me to then like work into the night and feel like I got a break and I got, reset. So if it's a good day, it's just fun to get a workout in and I'm enjoying myself. If it's a stressful day, it gives me a quick reprieve to then get back into it and get fresh. So I found that that was good for me. It's all figuring out how you can make it work.
I love that because you're saying like, let's stop looking to other people for the exact route on like what we should follow and how we should change and what we should do, and
Yep.
start like getting more in tune with ourselves and what we
Yep.
need, you know?
Yep.
Like I did this yesterday. I didn't start work till 10 and then I still had a nap in the middle of the day and I was like, did I like I'm kind of feeling a little shame about the fact that I
Well, you've
needed
got,
that,
yeah.
but I did.
There's someone barking you on social media to work harder. And frankly, my dad was that guy. Like I remember when I was in real estate, I called my dad to brag to him that I was up or in the office at 6 a.m. every day. I was opening the office. I'd leave at 7. I was closing the office, working 13 hours every day during the week, like 21 years old. And I told my dad this. I'm like, I'm in at 6 a.m. every day, da da da. And he goes, "What's wrong with 5 a.m.?" God damn it. And so that was the chip on my shoulder that was created by a hardworking dad. That being said, hard work is also important and finding something that you love enough to keep going at it. But it's also, again, I'm over 10 years into this, needing, things shift as well, where it's like, we're a big enough business now that if this thing is relying on me working 100 hours a week to sustain, it's broken. But I also love it. So I do work all the time because I'm focused on growing it and how I can build on top of it.
Yeah, you just keep moving the finish line for yourself.
Exactly.
Still running. Okay, so just last question to wrap us up. I just want to know like how things have changed since becoming a dad and how you
Yeah.
prioritize your family and what that looks like for you.
Yeah, it's fun. It's interesting. So I kind of went into this a little bit, but the anxiety of becoming a dad, the only piece I was worried about was how is it going to affect my ability to work like I do? And, I really I'm not done. I've thankfully built something great. I've built a great lifestyle. Like we said we'd get pregnant. My wife and I've been together 10 years and we have a 2-year-old. But we said we'd get pregnant when we around 35. And we said this like years ago. And she got pregnant 2 weeks after I turned 35. So it was like funny that like usually you're not supposed to time these things, but there it was. So we're at a point where like we've established ourselves. She's an incredible executive at a private equity fund too. And so we weren't worried about anything other than like, how is this going to take away? I travel half to 2/3 of the time, like I'm all over the place. And the shift for me was prioritization, where, if I get invited to speak at this happened. I got asked to speak in Barcelona at a conference. I went to Barcelona for 12 hours, went in, spoke, got on a plane, went home. And so just being more direct, and I stopped taking invites to like speak for 30 people in North Carolina or something like that. It's like I can do a remote, but I'm not going to make it to North Carolina for something that's not going to be worth it. So it actually got me focused on what are the things that have actually been worth it for our business. I also found in that same note, we had been focusing on like expanding into Europe and expanding into Asia and like opening up cross border. And it was like, well, wait, I started looking at my time invested there versus what we got out of it. I'm like, I get way more out of being in the US. Like we've built a great brand here. I'm better off saying no to conferences over there so I can say yes to stuff here. And that realization was because I was also looking at how do I be more efficient with my time, and jumping overseas is really hard to do efficiently, where I hate the place, but I've all of a sudden been in Vegas every month the past 6 because there's conferences there all the time, but it's an hour flight. I did this twice. I went to Vegas. My flight was like a 10 a.m. flight, landed, spoke, went back in the Uber, got up back on a plane and was home before dinner. So it's like finding ways that I can adjust my lifestyle because I really want to be a president. I love being a dad. So it's been like my favorite thing ever. I knew I'd like it, but I love it way more than that. So the adjustment has worked, and I'm still on the road. I'm still fine. Last year I flew 70 times. So it's like I'm still jumping around all over the place. But and we have a nanny to help us during the week, and we have babysitters if we need them on the weekends. But like really just trying to be more conscious of what I'm saying yes to hasn't hurt the business, thankfully, which was probably the only thing I was anxious about.
Yeah, that's good. And I know my kids are 11 and 9, so I can say that things will change like probably every year, every 2. And then when they're this age, every 6 months when there's a different sports season that you have to focus on.
Yeah. I've heard that. I've tons of friends with kids, and I see what they're, thankfully, again, that's what I was kind of saying. If you pay attention to your friends and, in social media about kids or movies, like watch Look Who's Talking. classic. Like, dude, something like that. Like, you'll understand, like, yeah, the first 3 months are really hard. They never sleep and they're always crying and you're cleaning up diapers. You don't know what to expect. And that's one other important note. I will say that I've now noticed this. Entrepreneurs that have kids do not seem to be as thrown off by it as other people, because I think we're used to chaos. We're used to not having any idea what we're supposed to be doing. So when it happens with kids, you're like, yeah, this is like, I deal with this every day in my business. Like, they're crying. I don't know why. My business, we're not making enough money. I don't know why. Like, it's just like you're used to having to figure out and solve problems. And I noticed like friends that don't come from that have a lot harder time adjusting. I've actually, not to
Probably,
toot.
and vice versa. If you have kids first and then you start a business, it's like, oh, I get this.
Exactly.
Yeah.
100%. Like it is very familiar in the sense of like, yeah, I mean, when we had and I watched it with my wife who likes structure, and she was really stressed about like, I don't know what we're supposed to do. I'm like, neither do I. But like, I'm like, listen, I know that we're above average intelligence. I don't know how much above, but I feel like we are smarter than the average person, and everybody does this. So we're going to be okay. Like, that was always I was like, we're going to be fine. Figure this out. We're smarter than average people. And like, let's be real. There's some really, really unintelligent people out there that have had a lot of kids, and those kids have survived. So we'll be all right.
That's true. When you need a reminder of the level of the bar, just
Yeah,
look
exactly.
around for a minute. Oh,
Right.
well, thank you so much for sharing all of this. It's been really great getting to know you and hearing your story, Erik.
Yeah, no, thank you
Do
for
you
having
want
me.
to let everyone know just where to connect with you
Yeah,
and
I'm
learn
just
more about?
at or slash Erik Huberman on every social channel, and just hawkemedia.com. Always happy to help entrepreneurs. We'll do free marketing audits, and we have a whole AI system that will do like a full benchmark report of like where your marketing's working and where it's not, that we are digesting over 8,000 companies' marketing, media, and revenue data. So we're always happy to help companies use that, et cetera. We know we're in this for the long haul, so we're always happy to help the ecosystem, so to speak.
All right. Awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.